there remains a lot of optimism because really that middle July date is the one I keep hearing about when they could potentially get players back and still start the season on time. Either way, the thing that everybody keeps talking about is whether or not they would play football with fans in the stadium or without them. Here's what Kirby Smart had to say about playing without fans.
I just think that's tough. I think, not that we play just for the fans, but we certainly are there to entertain, and it certainly affects the kids and the performance. And like you mentioned, if the safety of the fans is at risk, we're going to feel the same way about the players.
What if a conference, let's say the SEC, decides, you know what, in our regions, people are healthy enough, there's enough testing, whatever it may be, to go ahead and play each other, but maybe the rest of the country doesn't feel that way, or other parts of the country don't feel that way. What would you say about just a conference playing football against each other if that was the only way to have football?
That's the one thing about college football. You have to be unified across this country. And I think that's the one thing about this whole process that's going to be very tough is, like you say, certain areas are affected greater than certain other areas. And I don't think you can do that. I really don't.
So look, we're throwing out scenarios right now, Greeny, because that's what we can do, but who knows what this will actually look like. Either way, I thought that was interesting. You heard Texas A&M head coach Jimbo Fisher there saying that he doesn't see a world where you could have just conferences playing each other if somehow certain regions of the country are able to come back sooner than other regions. But you asked Ryan Day that question about a unified college football governing body in some way that would allow for everything to be the same. I think the NCAA is going to have to seriously consider that, but I also think there's some interesting possibilities outside of it.
Well, so let's talk about that. And let's bring Bobby in as well on this because you guys both cover this thing day in and day out. And you, Laura, you were the first one who got me thinking about this earlier in the week. And then I heard on your friend and mine, Paul Feinbaum's show yesterday, they had Tim Brando on, and he was talking about the embarrassing way the college basketball conference tournaments turned out, with everyone making different decisions and no one seeming to know what anyone else was going to do. And now we're bringing up the idea that in some, maybe the SEC might be playing football and the Pac-12 not playing football. Laura, what would have to happen for there to be a centralized leadership in college football? What is stopping that from happening?
Yeah, I think right now already they're talking about it because they are looking at all these scenarios and they're spending hours every day talking through what they could possibly be, just trying to do the best for not only their conferences, but for the other sports that are, obviously beneficiaries of college football being played in some way, shape, or form this year. And so I think that's really important in all of this, that we could see a world where there is just by result of what's happening in our country right now, there is some sort of unified governing body that results out of all of this. And I would not be surprised about it. I know that there were a lot of conference commissioners that were not happy at all about the way that things happened in and around the basketball conference tournaments leading into the cancellation of the NCAA tournament.
And then, Bobby, we've heard for a long time the idea that maybe the Power Five conferences would break off in football and do their own thing, and maybe you could have some sort of centralized leadership there. Does that feel like a solution to this? What are your thoughts on the topic?
It could feel like a solution to it. The thing is, it's all the conferences are so different on what they want. And the college football and college athletics really is so regionalized. Like, not every conference has all the same sports as another conference. The SEC thinks they're better than the Big Ten. The Big Ten thinks they're better than the Pac-10. And it's a little bit like Game of Thrones, Westeros out there. You're trying to bring together all of these different groups and trying to have them agree on something. And it's going to be very, very difficult because the regions are so different. The expectations are so different. And I know everybody wants the uniformity, but nobody's going to want to give up power or control.
Laura, let me really quickly come back to you because we heard Jimbo there. How many other people have you talked to about the idea that some conferences might play and some might not? Does it feel like that's a real possibility in the minds of the people you're talking to?
Absolutely doesn't feel real yet. And that's the important point to put out here, Greeny, is we're still 3 months away from that July 15th date that a lot of people feel like, hey, we can get people back in then, we can just play a regular season. But the optimism remains. There's also a lot of realism to all of this.
All right, I want to talk a lot more about this in our next hour because I think this is really interesting and could potentially be very important. Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.